Hi, in this video I will be talking about how you can ace IT infrastructure project manager interview. Let's get started. My name is Shyam and welcome to my channel P48. In this channel I talk about project management, career development, resume rebranding, interview tips and many more. And in this video we will talk about how you can easily crack or ace an IT infrastructure project manager interview. I have close to 9 years of experience in project management, and most of my experience is into IT infrastructure. So I've worked with some of the IT infrastructure product companies and also some of the service companies and integrators. And I am here to share my knowledge with you guys so that you can use this video as a quick refresher before your interview. So before we get started, let us take a step back and learn what is IT infrastructure. So these components are servers, storage, network devices like routers, switches, your virtual machines, your VDIs. As a project manager, you need to be aware of the components of the IT infrastructure. So servers basically is used for computing, then your storage for storing, retrieving, backup and recovery. Your network is used for the communication, and the security is for protecting your IT infrastructure. If I had to divide the projects in IT infrastructure domain or in IT infrastructure area, I can put it into 4 buckets. The first bucket is something that I would like to call as setup. So in this setup bucket, the kind of projects that you would be handling would be mainly related to new installation. It can be installation of a server, a storage box, a network equipment, or any hardware device. Then the next bucket is move. So in this move bucket, you will have projects related to migration, projects related to lift and shifts of these equipment. So the third bucket is refresh. In this refresh bucket, you will have projects like decommissioning or any kind of tech refresh that you're doing. So essentially you are getting rid of all the old IT infra and bringing in new. Then the last bucket, it is mainly for audits and security. So in these projects, in audits and security, you will usually have data center audits or network audits or any security implementations like installation of antivirus, server hardening. So these kind of projects. So what are the 4 categories? The setup, move, refresh, and audits and security. So whenever you get a project as an IT infrastructure project manager, your project would either fall into one of these 4 buckets that I just talked about. So what is the facility or what is the place in which all these work happens? So that is what we call as data center. So data center is a building or a facility in which all these components of the IT infrastructure are installed, maintained and operated. Either it can be done by your customer or they would give it to a third party to do these things. So this is the basic overview of what the IT infrastructure is and what are the components of it and what kind of projects that you would be doing. So what exactly is this IT infra PM doing in these projects? So as you know, these projects are typically run in a waterfall approach because most of the activities or the tasks that happen, they happen in a sequential manner. And there are a lot of components involved in IT infrastructure, and each of these components are separate teams or departments. Because network itself is a huge ocean. Same with servers and storage and other components that I just talked about. So as a project manager, you need to talk to all these teams and ensure that the work gets done, whatever that is scoped out for the project. So in an interview of an IT infrastructure project manager, you would be tested on 4 things. Number 1, what is your approach to a particular problem? So as an IT infra PM, most of these teams are distributed, and most of the times you would be working with remote teams, and it's evident that you would face some or the other challenges, and there would be some or the other problems. So what will be your approach is something that they will check during the course of the interview. Now the second thing, the understanding of the IT components, IT infra components, and the relationship between them. So as a project manager, you don't have to know every component in and out. You don't have to know the technology as such, but you should know the relation between these IT infrastructure components and how they talk to each other. Third point is identifying the risks and boundaries of an IT infrastructure project. So as a project manager, especially in the IT infrastructure, there is a lot of risks involved. There are a lot of tasks that you need to take care while you're planning, and also when you start the execution part. So you need to have a proper risk management strategies, and you should have a proper communication channel so that you define the boundaries of the. And most of the times, since there are a lot of physical activities that are involved, like installing, racking, stacking, and sending someone to the data center and coordinating those things, and sometimes you would also have to coordinate with the logistics team as well to ensure that the equipment gets moved to the data center or moved out of the data center. There are a lot of chances that things can go wrong. So risk management is quite essential. Now the fourth item that they will test you is your facilitation and coordination skills. Since you will be working with multiple components, multiple teams, most of the time these teams are remote. So your facilitation skill and your coordination skill is the most important skill that they will see. And this also includes the timely communication and how you manage the different stakeholders in it. So let's summarize what are these. First thing, your approach to solving a particular problem. Second is your understanding of the IT infrastructure components and their correlation. Third thing, the risk management. Fourth thing, your facilitation and coordination. Now let's see how you can prepare for the project management interview in an IT infrastructure domain. So when it comes to preparation, the first thing that you need to do is prepare your resume. I've already done a video on the resume tips. In that I have mentioned that depending on the kind of role that you're applying, you need to have that kind of resume. If you haven't seen that video, I'll place the link. Please go and watch that video. So once you have the resume prepared which suits for the IT infrastructure PM role, the next thing that you need to practice is the summary. So typically in any interview, the first question that is asked for most of the candidates is to summarize the resume, or they would ask you to walk them through your resume. So please remember, the summary that you are going to give should be less than 4 minutes. So it's important that you keep it short, concise, and you have a proper structure over it. Let's say they ask you to run through your resume. You can start with your first job. If you are experienced, please do not include your education qualification, your school, your background. You can start with your work experience. Talk about the first job, and then if you have multiple job changes in your resume, then you can summarize everything and you can come to the current job and give them a brief of your current job. Always give more information in that 3 or 4 minutes about your current job, because that is the latest experience that you would be having, and that experience is something which is fresh. So this time when you're providing the summary, so it gives a good time for them to go through your resume and try to pick up some of the questions. And typically the next following question is, okay, why don't you explain any recent project that you have done? Always try to pick up a project which is completed. Do not explain a project that is in progress. When you provide an example of a project that is completed, it's easy for you to put that in a phase-wise manner. Now let's talk about how you can put your project in a phase-wise manner. So typically most of the projects that you would have worked will have some or the other phases. But to keep it simple, you can use the PMI prescribed project phases, that is initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closing. The reason is simple. Most of the people know about it and it's relatable by all. Your organization would have their own way of defining a project or dividing the project in different phases, but try to keep it very simple and general so that everyone can understand. So whenever you pick a project to explain, ensure that it is successful, and also it should have few things that you learned, because it's essential that you not only talk about the successful project, but also you have to talk about the things that didn't go well and what were the measures that you took to rectify them. And also you need to include the lessons that you learned during this course. Now let's see how your project work will fit into these phases. So initiation phase, you can include the scope statement of the project. Along with the scope statement, you can also tell them about the total contract value and the total budget of the project. You can also include the objective and the key stakeholders, the customer names, the account names. Initiation phase, you can also talk about what were the methods that you used to gather the requirements. Did you draft the SOW on your own, or did you get it from the pre-sales or the sales team? So basically, how the sale or the deal got converted into a project. So the next phase is planning phase. In this phase, you need to talk about how you plan the activities, how you plan the tasks, what are the tools that you used to do that, and how did you decompose the overall scope of the work into work packages. You need to highlight the key milestones and explain the dependencies between each of these tasks. So as an output of this planning phase comes your schedule. So the next phase that you can talk about is execution. So in this phase, try to tell them how did you deliver the work packages, what were the methods that you used, and how did you track them. Did you use some kind of a ticketing system to track the activities, or you used some kind of a checklist to make sure that all the work gets completed? Or if you're giving an example of a migration project or a data center movement project, in this execution phase, you can talk about the migration events or migration waves. And as a project manager, how did you manage, track, and make sure that the work gets done in this entire wave? The next phase is monitoring and controlling. And in this phase, there will be two important things that you need to talk about: the risk management and the change management. In risk management, you can talk about how you identified the risks, how you documented the risks. You can talk about some of the documents that you used, like risk registers or RAID logs, and how you communicated these risks. At a later part, you can also talk about the risk strategies, risk management strategies that you used. Did you mitigate the risk? Did you avoid the risk completely? Did you transfer it, or you accepted the risk? You can also highlight the key tasks or the key milestones which were in your critical path. So the tasks on the critical path cannot be delayed. It has to happen. For example, let's say there is a new hardware that is going to arrive and you are migrating the data from your old hardware to new hardware. And as per your project plan, the end date of your project or the final end date of your project is going to end only when you decommission the old hardware. So the arrival of the new hardware is on the critical path. If there is a delay on the arrival of the new hardware, there is a delay in the decommissioning, and that means the end date of your project gets pushed. So you need to identify what are those tasks and highlight them in the risk management part. And coming to change management, in this you need to talk about how you handle the changes. It could be through a project change requests, or it could be an additional scope of work that the customer requested, and what were the communication strategies that we used to ensure that the change request is communicated and approved. You can also talk about the process that you used to manage the changes. Did you had to go through a CAB approval, or you just had to take an approval from your manager and get it approved? Now the last part is the closing. In this, you need to talk about the transition to operations and the lessons that you learned. So in this way, you can put your project experience into phase-wise approach, and you can use this approach to give a clear explanation about your end-to-end project management. Always emphasize on the risk management. Please talk more about the risk management strategies that you used and how you used. And always give realistic examples that in your conversation with the interviewer, you should be able to draw the line between projects and operations. Because sometimes, especially in an IT infrastructure project, some of the tasks are overlapping. Some of the tasks are actually being done by the operations team and some done by project team. So you should be able to communicate and draw that line between projects and operations. There would be questions asked on how you manage the scope creep. But the scope creep can happen. You need to talk about the change management strategies that you use. How do you manage a project change request? What are the methods? And you need to explain the process. You can also talk about the evaluation of a change. You can talk about the probability and the impact analysis that you do in a change management, and how do you rank the changes. Please emphasize more on the risk management part of the project, because in IT infrastructure projects, you're playing with the customer's data and the customer's IT assets. Talk about the downtime, the risks involved, how you made sure that the deliverables get executed, what kind of environment that was used. And since it's a IT infrastructure environment, there are a lot of sub teams that you'd be working. For instance, you might be working with a logistics team who would ship an equipment. You would be working with a data center team who would bring that equipment in the data center and rack and stack that. So there are a lot of chances, a lot of risks that the equipment get damaged, or there might be delay in the logistics due to some accident or snowstorm or any natural calamity. So next is communications management. So you need to talk about what are your communication channels, who are the stakeholders involved, and what are your communication strategies. You may be asked to provide a presentation to the steering committee or an executive committee who would like to take a look at what's happening in your project. There could be some metrics in which your project status could be tracked. So you need to talk about what are those metrics and what are the reports that you send. And the next point is, please stick to the basics. I mean, unless you have worked, do not put any new terms related to Agile, Scrum in IT infra projects, because most of the IT infra projects run in a waterfall approach. You really cannot do any Scrum event or any Agile related work here. There are some nuances that you can take from the Agile world. Let's say you run your meetings as a DSU, as a daily stand-up. You can do that. You can track some of your tasks through a Kanban board where you classify your tasks as to do, being done, and completed. You can use these nuances, but do not put everything about agile in your project. Important thing is you can also talk about the lessons learned and the things that didn't go well in your project. This will tell that you're open to take feedback and you are in a verge of continuous learning. I hope you liked the video. If you found this valuable, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And please let me know the topics that you want to see more videos in the comment section. Until then, take care and stay safe.